There was a gal named Mabel Normand who was high diving from cliffs. She was directing her own movies, getting ready to throw the first cream pie. Betty Harper Russell has written a book about Mabel Normand. Her story, she calls her Hollywood's first I don't care girl. And Betty, first of all, I got to ask you, what is the word spirituelle? It was this great description, but I could not find the word in the dictionary.
Ah, well, because it's a sort of pseudo-French. And there were two types of girls. There were the spirituelle, as D.W. Griffith, the early director, said, and the voluptuous. And that meant the girls who looked sexy and those who didn't.
When we do the promos for the show, we do them on the Friday before the week. And the staff brings us over our information, just who we're going to have on. And we were going to learn about Mabel Normand. Now, I had never heard of Mabel Normand at all. How did you come across her?
I hadn't heard of her either about 4 years ago. And I was looking for the first girl who was like the girls I fell in love with in my own movie, Youth. That is Carole Lombard and Jean Harlow. Well, Jean Harlow's a little before me, but Jean Arthur and Rosalind Russell, and these girls who I always thought extraordinary because they were both gorgeous. They were real glamour girls, and they were funny, and they would do anything. You know, all the slapstick, all the low-down stuff. So I looked, where did they come from? Well, Mabel Normand was the first. And then I found nothing had been written about her, and I couldn't figure out why. By the time I figured out why, I was involved, and it was too late to stop.
It's funny because Mabel Normand, and I admire you for your perseverance in getting this book done, because as I read it, I realized it was an incredible mess to kind of unravel. And why you bothered halfway through, I don't know. I mean, the book is great, but it must have been terribly frustrating to you. But Mabel's own accounts of her life, what she said about her life, were a strange mixture of fiction and fact.
Right, and everybody said the same kinds of things. I mean, nobody told the truth about anything. You know, Louise Brooks, who's getting a big play now because with her Lulu, said of Hollywood, from the beginning, the truth was not in them.
Yes, yes.
It's the nature of movies. Movies are made up. Everybody made up his name, his identity, his past, because he was making himself up all the time, or herself on the screen. We
should show some of Mabel's work, and in this particular clip that we have, she was with Charlie Chaplin, who I understand was crazy about her.
Right, and she really brought Chaplin into the movie. Max Sennett, who was Mabel's boyfriend, wanted to get rid of Chaplin, and Mabel said, no, stick around, this guy's got something. Then Mabel directed Chaplin. Now, she was the really first comedian to do her own directing, and Chaplin said, no way is a girl going to direct me. And then he cut out from the Senate studios.
All right, let's take a look. This is Mabel Normand and with Charlie Chaplin. Well, one of the things that apparently Mabel Normand didn't like about Charlie Chaplin, she said that he hogged the camera all the time.
I'll say, and you can see it in here, in Cotton Cabaret. When Mabel played with Fatty Arbuckle, they were a real team. Charlie made every woman a straight woman. And really, and he said, women to me are not funny. Women are the spirit of romance. And Mabel was exactly the opposite type, and that's how come the pie. As Hal Roach said, Mabel was the kind of girl when you kicked her, she kicked back.
Well, all right. So tell the story about when Max Sennett got angry at her because I think she was late to get to the set or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, Mabel was outrageous. She'd do anything, and she played all kinds of practical jokes. And one of her things would be, and she got very, if she called Max Sennett Nappy, short for Napoleon, and she wasn't about to take any of that dictatorial stuff. So when she was supposed to show up at the set, she'd appear without a stitch on in her window, maybe a picture hat, and say, "I'll be right down, boys." You know? And King Vidor said that Mabel was so outrageous that one time Nappy bawled her out for being late, so she got on his lap, sat on his lap, and wet her pants and his in revenge. You know? And King Vidor said his mother told him this when he was a boy in Texas, before he'd come to Hollywood.
Because they didn't want him to come out here, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
What, you know, in those times, there was a lot of talk about booze, cocaine,
Yeah.
drugs, the same as it is now in Hollywood.
Absolutely the same.
What,
Yeah.
what caused her downfall?
Well, it wasn't really drugs. She had a drug period, and she's one of the first girls. I mean, you know, when it's so hard to recapture those times when girls weren't supposed to do anything. Nice girls didn't, you know.
Yeah.
So if nice girls smoked and drank and, you know, played with the boys, well, what else is around?
At one
Coke.
time, the Hayes office wouldn't even let, I mean, they were trying to stop all smoking on
Oh,
on the
absolutely.
movies.
Oh, absolutely. Only naughty girls smoked in those early films, you know, like A Woman of Paris that Chaplin did. You can tell the girl is wicked the moment she lights up a cigarette.
Yeah.
You know? Well, Mabel got onto drugs, as so many did, right after World War I was the time when opium had moved out and cocaine moved in, and it was absolutely available every place.
It was legal, I think, wasn't it?
No, not
Huh?
quite,
I
not
think-
quite, but nobody paid any attention to it. The federal laws really didn't become operative until after the war.
Yeah.
So it's the first time that people paid any attention to it. Mabel had a bad drug period in about 1918 when she was working for Sam Goldwyn, but she survived. She got saved from it by the guy who was later murdered. You know? But she never got saved from the stigma of being a hophead. So eventually the sort of scandal, well, you know, Mabel's a druggie, helped to ruin her career.
And she
alas.
died at the age of 38?
In 1930, the end of silent film.
Sad.
Yeah,
sad.
went
Well,
out together.
It's you must have been fascinated unraveling the story, and I found it an exciting reading, especially the period about Fatty Arbuckle, which I had heard about
Yeah.
but never really understood.
And it's another of those crazy things where everybody remembers Fatty Arbuckle for raping a girl with a Coke bottle,
Yeah.
none of which is true. And his wonderful films, I mean, marvelous films, almost nobody's seen
Because of that stigma.
because of that.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for coming with us, Betty Harper Russell. The book is Mabel, Hollywood's First I Don't Care Girl, and it's a great story about the silent film era and one of the tragedies of that time.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.